Thank you. So what we're going to be working on today is a little tiny book structure that we're calling the box fold structure. And this was one of the first ones I made, just some decoration on the outside. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, so I only made it with 3 sections. And it's interesting, but it doesn't really have the full value of what the potential is for this structure. So then I made another one with the five components that we're going to be doing today. And when you open it around all the way, you have kind of a carousel situation. And this one I just used a different color paper for each section and then used the same colors randomly to decorate the various sections in the book. Just has a plain cover and a back, which always sign and date your books. It helps you know who they belong to and when you did them. At least a year is pretty much all I put on that. So I've asked you to come today with 4-inch squares of paper. What we're going to be doing with those is we're going to turn them into a structure that looks like this. Oops, how about that way? And so then we'll make 5 of these structures, gluing them together. And one difference between the directions that I printed up previously and what we're going to be doing today is as we go along, we're going to be attaching structure to structure to structure. So we'll be building the 5-piece structure as we go. So that's a little bit different, but not dramatically. On the directions, which I have disappeared. Anyway, this is kind of a diagram of what we're going to be doing. The first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be folding on these cross lines. And then we'll be making a cut. And we'll be making an extra fold. We'll be doing some gluing, and we'll end up with our structure. So what you want to do, if you want to follow along with me, is take your first 4x4 piece. We're just going to pull it up together to the cover to fold in half. Give it a little, you can use a bone folder or just your fingers. Open it up, rotate it halfway, the opposite direction, and create a fold going the other way. Do a little bone folding. Then we're going to open that up. And if you, let's see if I can have both of these on the screen at once. Yes, I can. So, about like that. So now what we want to do is we want to create our cut that's along one of these sections. And Gina taught me how to do this with the last demo we did by using your straight edge, folding up the edge and making your straight edge be nice and tight against that. Then you can take your cutter and cut from that center point, which I'm having trouble seeing, so I'm going to put it with my shadow up here. There we go. Lay it right against, and then I'm just going to cut down to make my cut for my fold. If you don't have your cutter, this kind of cutter, and you brought scissors instead, what I like to do in that regard is just take a pencil, which all my pencils have disappeared, but a pencil, just draw the line lightly along that first fold where you're going to be cutting with your scissors, and then it makes it much easier to see, so you can use your scissors to cut that fold. Okay, so right now we're at the point where we have 4 sections that are folded with middle folds. We have a slit. The next thing we want to do is put a diagonal fold in this box right here. And the easiest way to do that is to hold the bottom corner and the top corner and bring them around to touch in the back. Line up that corner point, and there's your fold that we need to make. So let's look at that again. We have our cut in the middle. We have our 4 boxes. And to make this diagonal fold, we're going to hold on to the bottom corner and the top corner. We're going to make them kiss in the back. So bring them together so that they meet in the back, line that edges, both those edges up, and fold that diagonal. So now we have our box, our structure with a cut, a mountain fold, and then this 3 remaining side folds. What we want to do next is get a sip of water so that we're, oh, someone's asking, should the decorated side be on top? Yes. Yes. And as I was going to say later,
Let me just interject for a moment. I think that message was private to Julie. I didn't see it. So the idea is I'm going to be moderating the chat so that Julie doesn't have to focus on the chat. Okay, so do either private to Laurel or do it to everyone, and then I'll see it and I'll let Julie know. I don't want Julie to have to be focusing on the chat. Thank you.
So the question was, should the decoration be on the top? And the answer is yes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just to continue with our demo, what we now want to do is put glue all on this section here that's below the diagonal fold. So I use, you know, those yellow pages that come at your door several times a year, these big fat books. I've decided they make pretty good glue sheets. So that's what I'm using as my glue sheet. One trick that is good is once you're going to put glue all in this box that's just below the mountain fold section, is fold up this piece that you've made that cut. So now the only thing you have to worry about is putting glue. You can use your glue stick or whatever you'd like, all on just this one section. And that other piece is out of the way. Okay, just get rid of my page, and I just have a bunch of those around, so I do that. Now what we want to do is we're going to put the bottom of this piece over the glue. And there's a couple ways you can do it, and the glue is kind of forgiving, but basically you want to just line up the edges at the corner. And this one's being a little bit wonky because I cut it a little wonky, but you know, it's what demos are for, and what making these structures many times helps you to understand where you need to be completely accurate with your cuts and your folds, and where you sometimes can fudge a little bit. So now we've put the glue in. We're going to press down on our mountain fold, and when we do that, it creates our first section. This nice little book. So now we get to do it 4 more times. So I'm going to set this one aside. I'm going to take my second piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half. Fold it in half the other way. Going to figure out where my center point is. Add my ruler so I can get it straight and make my cut. So once I've got the cut, I'm holding the opposite corners. I'm going to make them kiss. Setting that down and getting my diagonal fold. And another sip of water, because it's good to stay hydrated when you're working with book cards. All right, the next step is to apply glue to this box here. We'll do that. And I got a little bit of glue where I don't want it, so I'm just going to rub that out. Now I'm going to join the bottom of that one to the glue, lining up my corners, getting rid of my glue sheet, pressing down on my mountain fold to make my second structure. So now I have 2 portions of our structure done. And what we're going to do now, which you can do this all at the end or you can do it as you go. I'm going to do it as we go right now so that, because that just makes sense to my brain at the moment. So I'm going to actually, sometimes I'll take one of the glue sheet I just used, but then fold it in half so that I know there's no glue hiding anywhere. And I'm going to put glue on the back side of this one structure that we've made. Then I'm going to get rid of that. So I know I've got glue on this piece. The point is up. I'm going to glue it to the next one with the point up. So now I'm going to put these two together. And again, just lining up the edges, making sure that they're all straight. And then you can give it a good push. You can use your bone folder to get it good and creased. And then when you open it up, you have the first two structures combined to make. We're on our journey to make our 5-piece structure. And the next step, I bet you can guess. Take another piece of paper, line it up on your work table, fold it in half the one way, open it up, fold it in half the other way. There we go. I think I have a pencil here somewhere. There's my pencil. I think what I'm going to do, just to make my life easier, is just draw a dot in the middle so that when I put my straight edge on here and unfold it a little bit, I can actually see where my middle is. So you just learned a new technique that I learned right now. You could erase that or not. And then we're going to want to make these two edges kiss. So the bottom corner and the top corner diagonally, bring them together in the back. Match up the edges, set it on down, and create that mountain fold. Bring it around to the front. We're going to be adding glue to this front section. Glue sheet, set it down, fold that up out of the way. Pull up a little more glue in my glue stick. And then we're going to put this edge over to the corner, line up the edges, some little, there they go. Press it down, that glue stick, you can push in that mountain fold, and now we have our third section complete. And so we're going to set it up with its point up. We're going to apply glue to its back side. Here we go. Oops. And we're going to stand it up so we can see where it's going to go. We're going to make sure all our points are up. We'll see where our glue is, and now we're going to put it together, point side to side, lining up all of the edges. Being a little, I'm forgetting here. Let me see. I'm going to peel that off and try again because I missed. There we go. Great. So once you've got that one down, you can give it a little bit of pressure to get it going. You could use your bone folder. Just want to get it smashed. Good. And now we have 3 sections. We're going to move on ahead to make our 4th. Again, we're going to put edge to edge. This probably finger pressure is good, or you could use your bone folder. Give it a half turn. Do the other side, top those edges. Now I'm going to draw my little dot in the middle so I know where I'm going to be cutting. Use my straight edge up against the edge of the fold and cut from the dot to the bottom. Get some water. I'm talking and you're not, but throat gets a little dry. So now we want to take the bottom corner and the top diagonal corner. We want to make them kiss in the back. Lining up those corner points and giving it a push to make the mountain fold that we need up in this box. Now we're going to add more glue to this box down here. And I hope I'm not going too quickly. The trick of this is that if you even got 2 or 3 or 4 together right now, you'll get the idea of where we're headed with this, and then you'll be able to work on it more later. And Lining up those edges, giving it a good press, pushing in on that fold to make our square box. Setting it down with our points up so we know which edge we're going to put the glue on, which is going to be right here. Glue sheet, standing that up, and make sure we have the orientation correct. Lining up the corners and the edges, closing it up, giving it a good push. It's getting fatter. And now we have four sections, which you could stop now depending upon what you might want to do in terms of content. But this way makes 4 pretty much flat rooms. And probably if you didn't crease your mountain fold as hard as we've been creasing it, it wouldn't be as bouncy and might lay down a little flatter. Just another design consideration that you might think about. And now we're ready for component 5. So we add the edges to the edges.
Julie?
Yes.
I'm just going to give you a tiny bit of feedback right now.
Of course.
I'm just scrolling. No, it's good. I'm scrolling through seeing people. Everybody looks to be working intently and listening intently. And I think you're not getting questions because you're doing a lovely job of demonstrating it. Seriously.
Well, thank you.
Because not getting any feedback feels disorienting. And
yes, well, I'm just motoring along here, friends. So
yeah,
hopefully we're all doing together. And like I say, you're just basically learning this original technique, and you can take it wherever you like. We'll talk, as I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're done.
Yeah.
So I made my first fold. I see I need another one, so I'll rotate that. Line up my edges. Give it a good push. Put my dot in the middle so I know where to cut. Line up my cutting edge against that fold, and from the dot to the outer edge. You can all repeat along with me even though I can't hear you. Bottom corner to top corner, make them kiss in the back. For today. Make that fold. And then get a glue sheet.
Rachel is saying she missed which side of the box you glued to which.
Okay, so when you've got the design with your 4 folds, your 1 cut, and then your mountain fold, what you want to do is put the glue on the box that's below the mountain fold. So this one right here, X mark. Oops, can't see my X. But anyway, this is where we're going to put the glue. When I'm looking at my computer and seeing it, it's actually it looks like the top corner, but the glue is on one of the sides away from the cut, and you could actually it could go either way because it's going to make the same structure. So if you can kind of see what I'm doing, you can either glue it that way or you can glue it that way. You can put this box on top of this one or underneath it. It just depends upon where you put the glue. You're going to end up with the same result. But what we've been doing on all the ones we've been doing thus far is to put the glue on the box that's below or above the mountain fold. So hopefully that helps. Put the glue, get rid of the glue sheet, line up those corner edges, nice and straight, applying some pressure, pushing in that last fold, setting it down, point up.
Okay, so now there's a request for more clarification of which side when you're gluing the sections to sections.
Right.
Okay.
So
this,
it actually, well, your first one, you could glue any two together as long as your points are both up and facing. So our first one, we glued these two together. And so then we just had two sections, but the points were always up. When we went to add our next one, or now when we're going to add this one, which is actually our last one, we could put this one, you want it to be in a row so that these, let me put it this way. So you want it to be in a row so that the points are all here and you're going to have a flat back. So we could put it here or we could put it here. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't really matter. We don't want to do it upside down, although I've never tried doing that. It could be an interesting design element you might want to try later. But the main idea is you're making this ring of points up. And so I've been choosing to take the new one that we just made, put glue on one side of it, and then decide where it needs to go. You wouldn't want to do it this way with points. See how we've got points going in different directions? We don't want to do that. We want always to have the points pointing away from the center of the structure. So hopefully that helps. So as I said, I'm taking my last one. I'm going to put glue on its back. So now I'm going to stand it up so its point is out. I've got my glue here, so I know that I need to put it connected to this side so that the points will all be in line, standing up as they should be. So we now have a completed structure. And as I said at the beginning, you could have made all your little structures and lined them up and then glued them together one after another, but it seemed like for this purpose, this was a pretty reasonable way to do it. So when you've completed this part of the structure, as an option, you can add covers. And believe it or not, these are different papers. And I think I'm not even going to do it, but you can see what will happen. This will be your cover. You would glue it onto the back. When I cut my cover, I cut it maybe a 1/16 of an inch larger in both directions, just because I like my covers to have a little bit of dimensionality, to be a little bit bigger than the edge of the book. You can, the same color, it's hard to see. That's my choice. That's a design choice that I choose to make, but you know, it's up to you whether you do that. But the other thing that's kind of fun to do at this point, because as you can see, this little structure doesn't want to stay closed. It wants to pop itself open. So you can make what we've been calling a belly band. And that's where if you cut your 3/8 inch by 5 inch piece of paper, what you do is just kind of drape it around your space, kind of to see. You don't want it too tight or it's hard to get on and off, but you don't necessarily want it super loose either. And what I usually do at this point, when I've got it down like this, is I will just take my pencil and just come underneath the edge of that just a hair so I can kind of see where I want my glue. Don't necessarily want a pencil mark, you know, that's going to show after I put my glue on. So I just kind of put it in just a little bit. Take my glue sheet, take my glue, find out where my pencil mark is. And because that was the underside, I know I can come right to that edge. There we go. I can move my strip around and just come just outside that mark. That's where I did it. That should be fine. We'll see. And oops, set it up. I made it a little tight, but it's going to be fine. And so there you have a little closure that will keep your structure from flopping open. All right. So I wanted to talk and share just a little bit about some of the options. In the sample I did, I chose a different color paper for each section. There's that. You can use I know one of my friends is doing this with origami paper, which some of that comes in 6x6. So you would have a larger book if you didn't want to cut it down, or you could cut the paper down to 4x4. Now, decorating the sections. There's a trick here, because if this is your structure, and it's important for you to have directionality, you want to know where the top is. And so when you have this structure like this, you know that these two boxes need to be up. So I'm just going to put an up arrow on here. Oops, here's my pen. I know that this is the top, and I know that this is the top. So that when this is made, I know where the top is. Now, you say, well, that's interesting, but how does that apply to the pattern? And how that applies to the pattern is that 3 and 1. So this is going to be up, and this is going to be up. No, I think I did it backwards. Sorry. Let me see. I should have cut one myself. Let me cut this one, and then we'll know.
No, I think that's right.
Is it right? Yeah, because this is going to go over this. That's right. It is right. Yeah. So if you have an extra square and you want to make a template, or you look at if you printed out the directions, you already have the template there on your directions. You can just put an up arrow in these boxes. And I'm going to leave it to you to use your brain to figure out that it needs to go on the left side of 1 and the left side of 3. But although in my camera it's on the right side. So as I said, you'll just have to, maybe if I flip that around that way, I'll confuse the heck out of you. How's that? Is that better? So that's where, if you're doing content, those are the two sides that stand up inside your structure. You can also, of course, decorate the mountain fold portion, as I did with this structure, where I just put a triangle on each section. Colors are not showing up well. Let's see if this one's any better. There we go. That was my choice for decorating. I just used a circle cutter for the dots and that. So that's where you can think about your pattern, about which side you want up and which side you don't. The other kind of fun thing I found was that the bottom is kind of interesting. So you have this structure where you've got this nice pattern on the top. If you turn it over, you've got some nice spaces that are kind of hidden on the bottom. And so when I was playing around with this, I realized, well, I could do something interesting on the bottom too, if you wanted to. And that's about it. Make the circles or the squares any size you like. There are other people on the Instagram or the internet who are also using this structure to put pop-out designs in between the two sides, so that when you open the structure, you have something that pokes out. And that's, I haven't quite figured that out yet, so I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but it's something to think about if that floats your boat. And I think if there are no more questions, or even if there are more questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. But I think that's it for our little demo today. Hope you had fun.